A very good evening and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Joy Doreen Vira.
Welcome to Ktn Prime. My name is Eric Latif. Now this is the beginning of 3 days of national mourning following yesterday's air disaster where Cabinet Minister Job Saitoti, his assistant Oro Jode and 4 police officers perished at Ngong, and we'll be joined later on in this bulletin by KTN's very own Ktn Yabwa. Will be telling us how the investigations are going on. Well, Krista, what will you be having for us?
Well, the government has constituted a team to head a public inquiry into the helicopter crash that we did see yesterday. And Eurocopter, the company that manufactured the helicopter, is also set to jet into the country and to send representatives in order to begin their own investigation. So we will be looking at the investigations that will be running in coming days. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you very much. That and more will be coming up in this bulletin. But first, here are the highlights of KTN Prime tonight.
Reprieve for Ruto Sang as ICC sets their trial for March next year.
Initial probe into Ngong plane crash rules out weather pilot error as causes.
Legislators pay tribute to plane crash victims in a special gathering.
And as we count down to budget day tonight, we start our special budget series.
Good evening once again and welcome to KTN Prime. Eldoret North Member Parliament William Ruto and radio presenter Joshua Sang will sleep easy tonight after the International Criminal Court confirmed that their trials will be held from March 2013. Now this gives them at least 10 months to indulge in their political aspirations before the trials can begin.
Uhuru Kenyatta and Francis Mudhaura are next up on the proverbial chopping block, awaiting the confirmation of their trial dates. That will be done tomorrow morning. The 4 suspects have in the past expressed hope that their trials will be held after the next general election that has been set for March 4th next year.
William Ruto and Joshua Sang have at least 10 months to get their defense straight now that the International Criminal Court has ruled that their cases will be heard in March 2013.
The prosecution has no objection to starting after March 2013.
However, it's not clear which day of March 2013 the trials will begin. The exact trial date will be confirmed before the International Court breaks for summer holidays on July the 14th, 2012. While the judge may have granted Ruto and Sang's wishes, it is not clear if the ICC will grant Uhuru Kenyatta and Francis Mudhaura the same leniency when setting their trial dates. The 4 suspects have been hoping for the trials to begin after the next general elections, which have been set for the 4th of March by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Uhuru Kenyatta and Francis Mudhaura's possible trial dates will be set on Tuesday morning in a session similar to that of Ruto and Sang held on Monday. While Sang opted to appear in person at The Hague, Ruto thought it best to let his defense team do their job in his absence, during which his lawyer David Hooper objected to the prosecutor's team against withholding vital information.
Now we say it's for the prosecution to show the judges what they've done and for the judges themselves to mark it as appropriate or not. That's the safeguard. Take that safeguard away and what have we got? What we'll get is merely a redaction and some statement as to the basis for it. As I say, it may indicate or reveal or will indicate the identity of the witness. Well, I've seen cases where they've redacted the fact that 6 chickens were killed because that might have revealed the identity of the witness.
The judges have reviewed and said, all right, reductions may be done on the basis of those criteria. And the prosecution takes a particular document and said, we are retracting on the basis of such criteria, and then supplies a log that indicates what they've done.
By having the trial date set for March 2013, Ruto and Sang now possibly have a green light for their political aspirations. But there's still one litmus test they must pass, and that is the integrity test that is according to Chapter 6 of the Constitution. Catherine Omwando, KTN in Nairobi.
Now on to the update on yesterday's tragedy. And preliminary investigations into the Ngong helicopter crash have ruled out mechanical fault, pilot error and bad weather as possible causes of the crash. Transport Minister Amos Kimunya says initial findings did not point at a specific cause and investigations are still ongoing. A public inquiry team has now been set up to collect information and piece together what may have happened minutes before the crash and how it can be avoided in the future. Here is KTN's Edith Kimani with the details.
As soon as news broke that a helicopter ferrying top government officials had crashed in Ngong, killing all on board, speculation ensued as to what may have brought down the aircraft. Eyewitness accounts formed the basis of the initial assumption that it may have been a mechanical problem.
Tukasikia hiyo ndege ile vile inaguruma ni kama iko na shinda, hata tukaulizana kwani askari wanajifunza maneno, maana tuliona ni ya polisi. Hasa after kama dakika 5 hivi ndio tulisikia imenyamaza na iko kwa hewa, imenyamaza iko kwa hewa. Alafu tulipoangalia tukaona ni kama inatoa smokes, iko na nini, inatoa moshi. Hasa after kama dakika moja ndio tulisikia kitu imeanguka na ikaburst into flames.
This account was, however, different from ones that followed, which suggested that the Eurocopter may have burst into flames before it hit the ground. However, Transport Minister Amos Kimunya disproved this theory, saying the aircraft in question was new and had a valid certificate of airworthiness.
It was manufactured last year, 27th of July, so it's fairly new, and by the time it was registered, it had done 32 hours.
The Transport Minister also refuted claims that bad weather may have played a part in the accident, saying weather records showed clear visibility on the morning of the crash.
From Ngong, again, at 9 a.m., it indicated scattered clouds and some fog, and with visibility, I believe it was 8 kilometers.
The pilot's competency then came into question. Nancy Getwanja, the captain of the aircraft, together with her colleague Luke Oyugi, were licensed pilots for both commercial and private helicopters. They had received special training in South Africa for the Eurocopter AS350, the model they were flying, and had actually been endorsed by the French company that manufactures the aircrafts. According to Kimunya, the two were competent and followed proper procedure during the last official communication with the control tower at takeoff.
At that point, at 8:38, they were then transferred to the Flight Information Center on frequency 118.5, and they confirmed the same, and we lost all communication.
With the 3 common causes of aircraft accidents ruled out, the public inquiry into the crash set up Monday afternoon will have to launch thorough investigations to find the missing pieces into the accident. The inquest will be led by Lady Justice Kalpana Rawal and will have Major General Harold Tangai and George Makoenga as its assessors. Charles Mutinda and Faith Irari will be the assisting counsel from the Attorney General's office. The inquiry has already taken over investigations from the Chief Inspector and, according to President Mwai Kibaki, will conduct a thorough study into the crash. The wreckage site of the crashed Eurocopter continues to attract curious eyes from members of the public who, perhaps like members of the bereaved families, are looking for even the tiniest clue that may tell them what exactly happened here yesterday. Edith Kimani, KTN, Ngong.
Well, tonight, instead of our usual big question, we'd like to invite your messages of condolences over the Ngong plane crash that killed the 6 Kenyans, including Internal Security Minister Professor George Saitoti, his assistant Oro Ojode, 2 security guards and 2 pilots. You can please send your SMSs to the number 8040. The number is 8040. We will be sampling them throughout this bulletin as we go along. Joy.
Thanks, Latif. And well, you can keep those messages coming in. But moving on to more national news, but still related to the same, senior government officials and members of parliament today recalled their last moments with the departed ministers George Saitoti and Ora Ojode at a special consultative meeting between cabinet ministers and members of parliament on how best to honor the fallen ministers. His assistant and 4 members of the Kenya Police Service, President Mwai Kibaki, described the 2 leaders as hardworking and whose services to the nation will be greatly missed.
Day 1 of the 3 days announced by the President for special mourning of the departed, and the government is saying we should not speculate on the cause of the crash. Instead, we should leave it to the investigators who are carrying out their duties.
The death of the 2 ministers in charge of the internal security docket necessitated the meeting at the KICC, where the colleagues paid tribute to them. Those in attendance showered the men they knew too well with kind words and messages of condolences to the bereaved families of all the 6 that perished in the Sunday morning tragedy. And the mood was somber throughout the meeting, with Kibaki lamenting of the deaths and the loss the government will have to deal with.
The Honorable Professor George Saitoti and the Honorable Ora Ojode were highly respected members of Parliament who served our nation diligently. We will greatly miss their services to our nation.
This moment is very painful. This moment is one such moment that we will never want to experience going forward.
Speaker of the National Assembly described the 2 legislators as hard-working and who took parliamentary business seriously and were available at all times to respond to questions directed to their ministry.
It's a great loss to us. We are lost for words, but we pray that God will help us to bear the loss.
Those who spoke at the meeting recalled their last moments with the deceased, with Prime Minister Raila Odinga challenging Kenyans to honor Professor Saitoti by uplifting what he championed last, peaceful, free and fair elections.
I think we owe it to George Saitoti as members of Parliament to do everything in our power to ensure that the coming elections are peaceful.
The meeting also proposed that some cabinet ministers and members of parliament be incorporated into the funeral and burial arrangements, together with family members of the deceased. No dates or arrangements were discussed at the brief meeting. Aaron Sheng, Ktn Prime.
Indeed, remember to keep sending your messages of condolence to the number 8040. And as we saw in the story earlier by Edith Kimani, is that preliminary investigations are showing not pilot error, not weather, not mechanical fault, and therefore the government has now instituted proper investigation into this. And to join us now, to bring us up to speed on this is Wilkeston Yabo. Wilkeston, what do you have?
Thank you, Latif. Now, following the helicopter crash that claimed 6 lives, including that of Internal Security Minister George Saitoti and his deputy Ora Ojode, Kenyan authorities have set the wheels in motion, launching an investigation. The police force, the Kenya Airports Authority and the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority yesterday sealed off the area where the crash occurred as the first step in the investigation. This paved the way for the government to move to the next step, constituting a team to shed light on the circumstances that led to the crash. The Court of Appeal Judge Kalpana Rawal was selected to head a public inquiry into the crash that killed Internal Security Minister George Saitoti, his deputy Ora Ojode, 2 pilots Luke Oyugi, Nancy Gitwanja, and 2 bodyguards Joshua Tongei and Thomas Murumi. The manufacturer of the helicopter, Eurocopter, is also sending a team of experts to assist with the investigation. The representatives from Eurocopter are expected in the country on Tuesday, and they will then go onto the site to inspect the wreckage for clues as to what went wrong. It is expected that this will happen on Wednesday. Now, Trade Minister Amos Kimunya has already ruled out mechanical problems as a cause of the crash, saying the aircraft, which was delivered to the Kenya Police Air Force, to the Kenya Police Police Air Wing on 7th December last year had only logged 240 hours. Eurocopter says the plane was last serviced at the end of May this year, so the confusion between the two is to be sorted out later, we hope. The government has constituted a committee headed by Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka to plan the funerals of the deceased. This committee will work with other committees in the home counties of the deceased in the planning of burials for all 6. The committees are also expected to incorporate the views and preferences of family members. And in honor of all 6 victims of the helicopter crash, Parliament has postponed the opening of the new chambers until Thursday. And this is basically the government setting the wheels in motion with the investigations. Back to you, Latif.
Well, thank you very much, Wilkis Tanyabo. Now, Kajiado North constituency is in mourning following the death of its Member of Parliament, Professor George Saitoti.
Residents of Kajiado today assembled at the district headquarters in their numbers for prayers before moving on to Saitoti's mother's homestead to condole with the family. KTN's Wilkis Tanyabo now reports.
The flags flew at half-mast as the residents of Kajiado North constituency mourned the death of Professor George Saitoti, the Minister for Internal Security and MP for Kajiado North. Here, friends and foe were united by grief, each lamenting the loss of a leader who had provided the region with guidance for 2.5 decades.
The minister and the assistant minister worked so cohesively that really you would not be able to tell who is the minister and who is the assistant minister.
Among mourners was Moses Ole Sakuda. He made his bid for the Kajiado North seat in 2007 and lodged an election petition that he later withdrew.
I was able to pursue peace. We have been very good friends with the professor. We have been very good friends for the sake of peace of Kajiado North.
As they awaited news from the government as to the funeral plans, the district commissioner dispensed this advice to the locals.
Iko boma ingine pale Kiserian ambao kwa sahihi haina watu. Kwa hivyo ningeomba wale ambao ungependelea kutembelea ile familia tuende pale kwa mama.
They dutifully made their way to this homestead where Saitoti's elderly mother was reported to have taken to her bed after receiving the news, leaving his siblings Geoffrey Musengi and Penina to receive the visitors. No decisions would be made today, all parties waiting for communication from the government. Instead, the mourners sat silently, each remembering Saitoti's contribution to the area. Kajiado North is ranked as one of the richest constituencies in the country and is perceived as one of the most cosmopolitan regions. Saitoti's death leaving a wide gap.
Na tunaomba serikali isituachilie zile miradi zote ambazo Mheshimiwa Saitoti ametufanyia kama Kajiado North, tusiwe na pengo.
Silence falls over this homestead and over constituents of Kajiado North as the extent of their loss sinks in, so that family members and constituents now band together to mourn the death of Professor George Saitoti and to ensure that his legacy lives on. I'm Wilkis Tanyabo for KTN in Kajiado North.
President Kibaki this afternoon led top government officials to condole with the families of the late Internal Security Minister, Professor George Saitoti, and his Assistant Minister, Oro Jode. Kibaki has promised that the government will meet all costs of all funeral arrangements of the 6 Kenyans who perished in yesterday's crash at Ngong.
4 p.m. Monday evening, President Mwai Kibaki, accompanied by Prime Minister Raila Odinga, Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, House Speaker Kenneth Marende, and several members of Parliament arrived at the late Internal Security Minister George Saitoti's home in Lavington to condole the family. About an hour later, the group was at Ojode's house, where they as well expressed their deep-felt condolences to the family of the late Assistant Minister. President Kibaki assuring families, friends and Kenyans that the government will meet all costs of funeral and burial arrangements for the families affected.
All costs, government is going to be there. We are prepared and we are going to be assisting you in meeting all those costs.
On his part, Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka described Saitoti and Ojode as dedicated, hard-working and loyal MPs who were excellent in their duties. Sentiments shared by House Speaker Kenneth Marende, who described the two as the top in the list of the most devoted MPs in the current House.
I feel this tragic loss because if there was an assistant minister present in the House at any given time to answer questions, to the extent, Your Excellency, that when the Honorable Ojode was delayed in one day, I remember the Honorable Emmanuel was the chair. He said if it's for Ojode, we can understand.
Professor Saitoti was an astute statesman, served with excellent determination.
Prime Minister Raila Odinga took time to urge Kenyans to stop speculations as to the cause of the tragic air accident that claimed the lives of 6 Kenyans.
At times like this, there will be a lot of speculations, blame game, apportioning blame and so on.
Meanwhile, at the premises of Presidential Escorts flats in High Ridge area, where Inspector Joshua Tokei and Sergeant Thomas Murimi, who perished in the Ngong plane accident, were residing, Tokei's and Murimi's family still coming to terms with the sudden death of their loved ones. Tokei's wife of 22 years still in shock over the Sunday's accident. The officers left behind their families in emotional turmoil, plugged into the depths of sadness and hopelessness by the cruel hand of fate that robbed them of husbands, fathers, and breadwinners. And their hope is investigations will reveal how their loved ones perished and that the government will put in place measures that will avoid a repeat of such ugly accidents. For Ktn Prime, I'm Angel Katusia.
Thanks, Angel Katusia. Now, let's have a look at the lives of the 2 pilots. Nancy Gitwanja and Luke Oyugi were 2 pilots who joined the police aviation unit in the same year, paired up as the perfect team, and as fate would have it, died together in the line of duty. The 2 left behind family members with more questions than answers on what exactly happened on the ill-fated flight. KTN's Asha Milu visited the families of the 2 captains.
A dark cloud hangs around Langata's West Park estate that houses police officers in the aviation wing. 2 families are in mourning. Captain Nancy Gitwanja and her co-pilot Luke Oyugi were steering the ill-fated chopper that plunged into Ngong Forest. Both pilots hailed from humble beginnings. Oyugi's family bearing testimony of his long struggle when he mended broken bicycles before finally becoming a pilot.
Alikuwa anapenda kazi yake, tukikuja hapa anatuelezea everything. Anataka tujue, even sisi hatuelewi anything, lakini anataka tujue anything, everything.
Patricia Oyugi now left the great task of raising their 4 children all by herself.
Nilisikia hukumu juu watoto naye ameniwacha nayo. Naona first bond yako ni form 3 sasa. Alafu hao wengine sasa mimi najiuliza sasa nitafanyaje na watoto.
A few blocks away, Captain Nancy Gitwanja's sister has had to step in to take care of the 3 children she leaves behind. The news of the accident slowly sinking in.
Nancy hata akitoka hapa na anafanya hapa tu Wilson. Anapiga simu mara kama 10. Anapigia mfanyika watoto wangu wako aje.
At the Wilson airport, stand colleagues trying to come to terms with the reality. Nancy and Oyugi's workmates retracing the final steps of the 2 pilots, still unable to find out what may have gone wrong during their flight. Pilots here say that the 2 had followed the normal safety procedures before departure. Nancy, who was the captain for the day, is said to have been highly skilled and had already clocked 1,166 hours and 29 minutes of flying time. Oyugi, on the other hand, had clocked 894 hours in total, 775 as the pilot in command in different flights. They both became pilots in the year 2000 and gradually developed into the perfect team that would ferry VIPs around the country, especially the late Internal Security Minister George Saitoti. This is the spot where Nancy and Oyugi shared their last moments together before taking off for what would be their final mission. And as their colleagues here at the Wilson Airport await for the relevant authorities to determine what exactly caused the accident, they mourn the loss of 2 colleagues that they describe as highly skilled and diligent in their work. Reporting for KTN, I'm Asha Mwilu in Nairobi.
Thanks, Asha. Now, in the course of covering the Ngong plane tragedy yesterday morning, raw footage, even though accompanied by a warning over its contents, was featured on KTN.
It was immediately found to have improper content and was immediately suspended by our quality control team. We take this opportunity to sincerely apologize to the families and our viewers for the offending material inappropriately aired. And just to remind you that tonight we are not asking our usual big question. Instead, we are inviting your messages of condolence over the Ngong plane crash that killed 6 Kenyans. Send those SMSs in to the number 8040 just to sample some of what you are saying. I'll take this one from Dr. Iria, who is the chairperson of the Tuvuke initiative. The entire fraternity of Tuvuke for peaceful electoral process grieves with the families of the 6 victims who perished. The minister has been the pillar in the peace process in this country. We must uphold what he held dear.
And we also have one coming in from Grace Njoroge from Nairobi, who is saying Kenya has lost the best and most hardworking team ever in the most important ministry, security. The two were a great team. We'll miss them dearly.
From Kilifi, Kenya says the demise of the 2 ministers is shocking. May the God Almighty give strength to the families of the crash at these trying moments.
And also one coming in from Milton Njoroge in Kikuyu. You're saying Professor Saitoti has been a good friend and political mentor. Kenya has lost a very hardworking minister and a level-headed politician. May God rest his soul in eternal peace.
Well, thank you very much. Keep the messages coming in. The number is 8040. Your condolence messages to the 6 Kenyans who perished in yesterday's plane crash. We'd like also to apologize for some error in graphic earlier. We had said that Amos Kimunya is the Minister for Trade. He is indeed the Minister for Transport.
You're watching KTN Prime. After the break, we'll be giving you details on the budget countdown.
Are you looking to buy a commercial property, a holiday home, or make a valuable investment? Come to the most exclusive and elegant property exhibition happening right in your neighborhood. Presenting bigger and better, the Mega Property Festival 2012 at the Visa Oshwal Center, Ring Road, Parklands on the 15th to 17th June in conjunction with the East African Housing Expo and Magazine. Come visit various local and international property exhibitors under one roof. For stand bookings and inquiry, call 0733 993393 or email info@elegantexport.com. Proudly sponsored by Dunhill Consulting, Corishell Beach Apartments, UNESTA and Hiranandani. Proudly partnered with the Standard Group and Asian Weekly.
At UAP, we enhance lives across Africa. Insurance, investment management, property investment, and financial advisory. UAP, better, simple life.
Turn your house into a home by visiting the Iranian Solo Exhibition with fantastic offers on furniture, leather products, handicrafts, carpets, and so much more. The Iranian Solo Exhibition from 8th to 17th June 2012 at KICC. Entrance and parking free.
And now, introducing another one from Home of Quality. distilled Crescent Vodka. Now available. Keroche Breweries Limited. Leaders in quality. The home of quality. Truly Kenyan. Strength and wisdom beyond borders.
Digital migration is on. Catch the beautiful colors, the clarity, the wide choice of entertainment on your TV now. Digital TV, a beautiful new world of entertainment. The new Nivea deodorant Invisible for black and white. No white deodorant stains on black. And for the first time, no yellow stains on white. Black stays black, white stays white, and you stay 48 hours protected. New Invisible for black and white deodorant from Nivea. 100 years of skincare for life. To win, visit www.niveainvisible.co.ke.
The Kabarak University Half Marathon will be held on 30th June 2012 in Mogotio town. The race begins from 6 a.m. at the Equator and finishes at the Kabarak University grounds. Registration is 300 shillings for the 21-kilometer half marathon, 1,000 shillings for the 5-kilometer corporate race, and 100 shillings for the children's race. You can register at all Transnational Bank branches, Mobile World offices, and CAS offices North Rift. Registration closes on 25th June. There are great cash prizes and heifers to be won. Proceeds from the marathon will help support Gata Baby Care for abandoned children. Kabarak University, world-class education in biblical perspective.
New Airwick Freshmatic. Just set the timer and it releases bursts of fresh fragrance automatically and brightens your home. Something in the Airwick.
You're watching Ktn Prime. We're glad you're still with us.
Now, moving on to more news, the Independent Election Boundaries Commission has dismissed assertions that the budget for Kenya's next general election is the most expensive in Africa.
Commission Chairman Isaac Hassan says the Commission only had ambitious proposals that were aimed at ensuring a credible election.
IEBC's hopes of getting 35 billion shillings for the polls were quashed when the Cabinet and Parliament decided to allocate the body just over 17 billion Kenya shillings for the exercise.
We have to work within what we are finally approved by Treasury and Parliament. So when you are talking about expensive elections, I know the media has been carrying that story over and over again, and it's all based on the proposal from the Commission. It's not based on what has been allocated. So if you go and do a cost analysis, you will see that actually it's not even more expensive than any other country in the region. But more importantly, you have to also appreciate that we are doing so many things which are not done by in any other normal election cycle. We are doing fresh registration of voters. We are not doing a revision of the voters register. We are not just updating our register, we are doing a fresh after the boundary delimitation.
In presenting the budget estimates for the financial year 2011-2012, the Treasury then sought to focus on enhancing the efficiency of government expenditure in view of critical resource limitations and ensuring macroeconomic stability.
One approach adopted in the budgeting process was the linking of key projects in the budget to the country's economic blueprint, Vision 2030, in a bid to spur economic growth.
But as KTN Zawadi Mudibo now reports, little has been achieved under the near 1 trillion shilling budget.
Anxiety was written on the faces of many as then Finance Minister Uhuru Kenyatta made his way to Parliament chambers to make public the contents of Kenya's 1.1 trillion budget, the highest in history.
Honourable members, we can only create these opportunities if we expand our economy, and in a manner that covers all sectors. Sustaining inclusive growth requires to continue building transparent, responsive, accountable, efficient, and effective national and eventually county governments.
Clearly, Treasury had not only the Vision 2030 flagship projects in mind, but also numerous medium-term aspirations, most of them spanning from the year 2008 and targeted to bear fruit this year.
This budget was much more aligned to Vision 2030 than previous budgets had been. And there was a significant focus on the traditional areas such as infrastructure. Infrastructure has been a major focus of the budget, for the entire medium-term planning period of the first phase of the Vision 2030.
Economic analysts would argue, though, the macroeconomic environment for the fourth quarter of 2011 was generally stable, with inflation under the period of review showing reduction in trend from 18.31% in January to 16.69% in February and down to 15.61% in March. Don't rejoice just yet. All these projections come against a backdrop of an initial 5% inflation target as highlighted in financial year 2011-2012 budget policy statement.
After announcing the trillion shilling budget, Kenya has been sailing on one of the highest inflation rates, from 15% hovering up to 21% and then back to around 16%. So we've been in a state of high inflation throughout.
And here are the hard facts. Current account deficit has deteriorated to a deficit of 290.1 billion shillings from a deficit of 187.7 billion shillings in a similar period the previous year. This deficit was higher than projected at 199.8 billion shillings per the year 2011 budget policy statement, GDP at nominal, and an assessment of these facts by the Controller of Budget indicates that this has been occasioned, or rather was occasioned mainly by a widening trade deficit, now standing at 742.1 billion Kenyan shillings. The total budget for the financial year 2011-2012 was slightly above a trillion, comprising of 552.8 billion for recurrent, 396.5 billion shillings for development, and 209.5 billion shillings for consolidated fund services. Cumulatively, revenue collection for the period 1st July 2011 to 31st March 2012 stood at 498.6 billion shillings against a target of 519.9 billion shillings. And this represents a revenue deficit of 21.3 billion shillings. Further, the Controller Budget approved and released funds amounting to 366.1 billion shillings for a current budget, which is 66.7% of the gross estimates, and another 142.4 billion for development, which represents 55% of the gross estimates to various ministries, departments, and government agencies, popularly referred to as MDS.
A number of ministries are returning money back to the Treasury because they have not spent the money, and they are citing procurement challenges. Some are citing donor country conditionalities. So I think what we need to be looking at is, why should we always have the same excuse? because if you have a problem, we need to solve it.
The Office of the Control of Budget has noted from the expenditure analysis that some of the MDAs have partially absorbed the resources available to them. In essence, this is proof enough of non-utilization of resources that results in non-provision of goods and services to the public.
This is the Thika Superhighway, a project that we all refer to as the Thika Road. It is one project that has earned government a lot of praise, not just locally, but also within the global scene. And the assumption has been that government, and especially Kenya's road network, is this modern. But wait until you get to know the statistics and the absorption rate of the entire fiscal infrastructure sector.
I would have hoped for a better absorption of budget funds last year.
And while speaking to KTN on phone, the Controller of Budget Agnes Odhiambo notes, among other issues, that there are inadequate financial management information systems to provide timely and accurate information on revenue and expenditure, as well as lack of proper coordination of the devolution process, with the transition authority still not yet functioning as key impediment to the seamless implementation of the budget, thereby occasioning very low absorption rates. Reporting for KTN, I'm Zawadi Mudibo.
Well, thank you very much, Zawadi Mudibo. Remember, this is the beginning of a series on special budget features running all the way up to Thursday when the budget will be presented.
And well, you're watching KTN. Still to come, we'll be looking at business. News today that we'll be joined with Bonnie Tunya, who is going to be taking us through this week's business on KTN.
The Honorable Professor George Saitoti and the Honorable Orwa Ojode were highly respected members of Parliament who served our nation diligently. We will greatly miss their services to our nation. They were patriots and committed public servants.
Enough for these gems, but gems are getting tougher. You need advanced protection. Lifebuoy Advanced Lifebuoy gives protection against 10 infection-causing germs. 10 infection-causing germs. 1 advanced protection. Lifebuoy.
It's time to migrate your analog TV to the beautiful new world of digital television. Simply buy an approved DVB T2 set-top box from an authorized dealer today. Connect your UHF aerial and hook it up to your TV for a crystal clear connection to your favorite TV stations and many more. Digital TV, a beautiful new world of entertainment.
Years now, Old Mutual has helped people invest to secure their future. With this experience comes much wisdom. Wisdom to enable you to do great things.
And welcome to this edition of KTN Business Today. My name is Bonnie Tunya. Now I'll start to look at issues to do with KRA, where the Kenya Revenue Authority should be penalized for late payment of VAT refunds. Now this is according to Nikhil Hira, a tax partner at Deloitte, who holds that East African will see the institution become a more proactive in clearing tax refunds backlog, now estimated to be more than 18 billion Kenya shillings. Now Zawadi Mudibo has that report.
tax refunds for years have seen the Kenya Revenue Authority be classified as one of the institutions adding to the costly sense of doing business in Kenya. With estimated 18 billion shillings held by the authority, this means that it is holding growth prospects for some businesses.
The problem for business, of course, is that they're not getting any interest on this money, and at the same time they're having to go out and borrow to fund their working capital.
It is on this basis that Deloitte East Africa is putting up a proposal to have the cumulative funds and interest to the advantage of businesses in the country.
In the last budget, Mr. Kenyatta announced that all refunds will be made within 120 days. It didn't happen, and I think it is not going to happen as long as there is no penalty for not making the refund.
Although there is a constitutional court mandated to deal with issues of this nature, the expectation for many is that the VAT bill as proposed in the budget policy statement will make it mandatory for the taxman to be efficient in disbursing the refunds, as is the case with businesses that are penalized for delays in disbursing the taxes. Meanwhile, government has been asked to widen the tax net to enable it to reduce the massive budget deficit expected in the 2012-2013 fiscal budget set to be unveiled in Parliament this Thursday. It is expected that if the tax net was expanded and a lower corporate tax rate introduced for small and medium firms, more revenues will be earned and budget funding made easier going forward. Zawadi Mdibo, KTN Business Today.
Now, a group of university students from the Swedish University of Agricultural Science are on a tour of the Moya Rice scheme as part of their classwork. Now, the master's students, according to their professor Jan Lagerhoff, are out to learn about the production and marketing of the area. Now, the team visited the nice rice millers within the Moya irrigation to get relevant exposure on the reality of the various processes the grain must undergo before being put on the table as food. Now, Moya produces an estimated 80% of Kenya's total rice production, within each season of harvesting recorded at 40,000 tons. And now some positive news now, where the Equity Bank Chief Executive James Mwangi was over the weekend named the Ernst & Young World Entrepreneur of the Year. Now, he beat competition from 59 other captains of industry from across the globe. The award was given to the CEO for what the judging panel termed as his ability to create products that enhance financial inclusion in the African region. Here's the detail.
James Mwangi is arguably one of the household names in Kenya's corporate world. As the Chief Executive Officer of Equity Bank, he has been credited with several titles and achievements in putting the bank ahead of the pack. Having moved the commercial bank from a humble beginning as a struggling microfinance to now a multi-billion publicly owned outfit, this achievement cannot be gainsaid. It is out of this that he was over the weekend fitted as the World Entrepreneur of the Year. He beat a field of 59 other entrepreneurs controlling multi-billion-dollar companies from all over the world that had been shortlisted for the award. He dedicated the award to the staff and customers of the bank. Equity Bank is the largest bank by customer base in the region. The bank has more than 7 million accounts, representing over half of all the bank accounts in Kenya. Michael Karanja, KTN Business Today.
That's positive news for the Kenyan banking sector. An insurance group, CIC, is set to list in the Nairobi Securities Exchange as Airtel unveils its new marketing campaign. This and much more coming up on our corporate briefs. CIC Insurance Group is set to list at the Nairobi Securities Exchange by introduction. The insurer is set to list 2.1 billion ordinary shares valued at 1 shilling each at the main investment market, with a listing price set at 3 shillings and 50 cents. CIC says it opted to list by introduction since it does not seek to raise capital. The insurer's paid-up share capital stands at 2.1 billion and has an asset base of 11.1 billion shillings. Meanwhile, Airtel Kenya has announced the launch of a brand campaign dubbed the Mimini 254 and a tariff dubbed Club 254 that will see customers enjoy free Facebook and Twitter services, as well as enabling customers to choose and call 10 friends for 1 shillings per minute, billing while sending SMSs for free. Airtel CEO Shivan Bhargava says the new platform is aimed at encouraging the youth to express their dreams. And finally, Samsung has introduced the CSX655N series of printers into the Kenyan market. The 55 pages per minute printer will be available across Eastern Central Africa and will be distributed through Red Point Distribution. At the same time, the Nairobi IT Expo held over the weekend. HP unveiled the incredibly thin HP Ultrabooks ahead of its planned launch later in this quarter. And now time to look at how your money is performing at the Nairobi Securities Exchange on the market. Numbers coming up next. Well, and that's all the time we had for you here on your home of business. Let's do this again tomorrow. I'm Boni Tunya.
Kura ni ya siri, si ya kuinua mikono.
Kwani mnafanana anje? Mimi ndio sasa aliniambia inaitwa secret embarrass.
Maybe you better start talking or you are going to lose your salary.
Then I came home, I guess.
Patricia, you didn't come home.
It's now time to look at the day's sports. I'm Nicholas Mudimba. 530 million shillings budget target set by the National Olympics Committee of Kenya is far from being a reality. 46 days to the Games in London. NOC Chairman Dr. Kipchoge Keino said in Nairobi today that fundraising initiatives are ongoing.
Kenya is yet to select her co-flag bearers to the London Olympics. As it stands today, only 6 marathoners, 3 10,000 meters male runners, a boxer, a swimmer and a javelin thrower are the only ones who have confirmed their London Olympics ticket. But that aside, the National Olympics Committee, which is charged with preparing and taking Kenya's representative to London, is yet to meet the financial target of 530 million shillings. NOC said in Nairobi that not even half of that has been raised, 46 days to the Games kickoff. The government had promised to contribute 200 million shillings. So far, Procter & Gamble have offered 14 million shillings, NSSF 35 million shillings, and retail chain store Nakumatt through the Kimbia Card Lottery, which aims to raise 100 million shillings. Kenya Charity Sweepstake is set to offer monetary assistance.
And we asked the ministry, before even the head of state has allowed us to be able to have a charity, start a charity, and I'm happy to tell you that the ministry have accepted, and we are working out, the license is going to be out, and that alone is going to generate money.
Athletics Kenya will hold the Olympics trials in a week's time, during which the complete picture of the number of Kenyan representatives will be known. If the required amount is not reached, then NOC might be forced to scale down on the number of athletes to take part in the games.
We are encouraging those athletes for them to be able to qualify, and we have a lot of talent in track and field, they are going to qualify in all the event except the sprint event.
Haitawezekana wenzetu especially kwa Paralympics juu timu yetu ni kidogo sana kupuguza michezo kama yetu ambao ni walemavu inaweza kuwa shida juu tukitaka ikuwe haki kwa kila mtu.
Kipchoge was speaking at the launch of a nationwide sports kits distribution by Procter & Gamble, which will target 150 schools and 200,000 kids countrywide. Victor Ogale, KTN Sports.
1.5 billion shillings worth Kenyan Celtic midfielder Victor Wanyama has expressed his interest in joining the English Premier League before the end of the transfer window. And already 3 clubs, Liverpool, Stoke and Queen's Park Rangers, are reportedly interested in the Kenyan international. The Scottish Daily Record newspaper quotes the player as saying the player is interested in joining the English League. Record Sports newspaper of Scotland says in its latest publication that Wanyama is banking on the Star Scottish League where he won the league title last season. Wanyama joined Celtic from Belgian side Beerschot AC for £900,000, and of course he looks forward in joining he joined it for a 4-year record. Sport also reports that Italian champs Juventus will be keen to bid for Wanyama, but they have been told by Celtic that the player's preference is a move to England. It was a goal galore at the Kisumu Polytechnic over the weekend when host Kisumu girls routed Bondo girls 13-0 in one-sided Coca-Cola Kisumu sub-branch match. Jacinta Tieno opened the floodgate as 3 minutes into the match. By 15 minutes, the scoreboard was reading 5-0. Rosa Tieno hit a brace while Melvin Award and Jacinta